Can you talk in a little detail about the mechanics of the change in governance? How did it work?
Maybe I suppose you've got to take this back to that we were beginning this process, I guess, in 2011, 2012. So you may not apply. You may want to apply things slightly differently if you're doing it now to then. But back at that point, we took advice from Arts Council, and the advice was to produce a skills audit of who we wanted. Our board is a board of 9, and we were obliged to have one district councillor on the board. And we were advised to produce a skills audit, and then to pull together the board. And so that was the first stage. We advertised for the chair, and that post was, in terms of the mechanics of that, it was the district council advertised for the chair. They interviewed the chair, and for that post, for that voluntary position, the chair, and made that appointment. Once that person had been appointed, I wasn't involved in that process, the interview process. Once the person had been appointed, he and I worked together. I'd already produced a skills audit and identified most of the potential trustees we were going to go for.
Was that something that took a fair amount of time, that skills audit?
Was
it a process that you followed?
We didn't want a large board, so 9 obviously workable. So we're trying to keep it as slim as possible. But the board was, there are obvious people you would think you would need in terms of property, legal, those sorts of skills. And indeed, I think it's also really important. We had 2 museum specialists who had a museum background, and that was really important actually, to have more than one.
So you ended up with a board which was predominantly based on the skills that you needed, rather than them being museum professionals.
Skills. But we had 2 people. We had 2 people who had a museum background, and that was really important because our board are fantastic in common skills, and none of them had, apart from those museum specialists, none of them had an experience of running a museum.
Interesting.
So, or a museum. They had a casual interest. So it was very important to have a weight of opinion in debate, dealing with issues, because I think they wouldn't have been fully understood. So you needed, I think, having 2 people with that skill was really important to make their voice bigger, because it's critical to, I think, it's just in terms of all the things that you and I are aware of, the professionalism of the culture in which we work and what we should be providing. You need to have that well represented on the board. In our case, I also talked to other museums with charities and asked how their boards were pulled together. And I felt, in our case, I decided that it wouldn't have been appropriate for me to be a trustee in my own right. So, as director, I service the board, and they make those decisions in board meetings. But I'm their key advisor.
The operational from the
I think that would work better. I think in some cases, the director is appointed the trustee as well, but I wasn't keen on that particular environment, that particular arrangement. So, skills are also very important to get those key skills that you need in order to develop your museum. And obviously, legal, money, accountancy, all those things. But absolutely give weight to the museum professional, contribution, because they need that needs to be a big voice.
It's easy to get
on the board.
In legal discussions, isn't it?
So I think so we had a board of 9, and so the first process was then we approached them, and there was there's obviously some debate as they accepted or didn't. Subsequent to that, over the years, there's obviously been changes in the board makeup, and there've been following that, appointments were made either through advert or through us approaching people.
Did you find people were very keen to sign up to the board, or less so?
No, they were. Yeah, people are very no.
Yeah, that's good.
They were keen. Broadly speaking, yeah.
Yeah.
I think I think for us too. Up until recently, we've had one of our museum trustees, if you like, has come from one of the university museums in Oxford, and that's been was a good connection.
I think one of the immediate things that you recognise, and I think you recognise it throughout the team, and in some ways, Stephen, it would be interesting to interview yourself at some point. But I think is you sense something different in everybody. There's a slight sort of there's an energy, a spark that you feel. It's nervousness. It's absolutely there's a nervousness there, but there's also an excitement and a sense of difference. I would say that's almost immediate. And I remember when we sort of went round and visited different places the weekend that we transferred across to the trust. You could sense that in the various venues that we visited. There's hope, there's anticipation, there's also, like I say, nervousness, uncertainty, and so on. So I think that's not to be underestimated. I think the other things that I would say are it happens overnight, the actual technical responsibility going across. So, I don't know whether this will stay in after the edit with HCT, but I do remember that it was quite late in the evening when we actually were able to sign the agreements, just sort of finalising things. So I remember Alan doing the crossword and us ordering in a pizza, so that as we were waiting for the for the contracts to come in and for people to sign them who needed to sign them, and there were a lot of contracts. So I would say that the other thing, and you realise that as soon as that signature's on the paper and there's a date on it, that's it. It's over. So there's a lot of work that goes on towards preparing those contracts by a lot of incredibly clever people within the museums and arts teams of Winchester and Hampshire, within the legal services and the financial services and project management of Hampshire and Winchester as well, and by the trustees in terms of their sort of input and engagement. And all of that work culminates in the actual sort of physical signing of those documents, and it's a great occasion. It's a memorable occasion for me, most definitely. But there's a whole mass of work that goes into that. We were looking at property leasing. We were looking at grant funding agreements. We were looking at collections agreements, and we were looking at asset transfer agreements and so on. So there's a lot of paperwork. We were bringing two local authority organisations together. Once you've done that and you've moved into the trust, I think this is where you realise that, and the expression that we started to use was building a plane while flying it. Because what you actually realise is, if you were starting something completely new, you'd be sort of building it up over time. And this is something I'm doing now with another project I'm on now, and I can sort of see that the value of doing it that way. But what you're not doing if you're transferring out an existing service or provision into a trust, a new organisation, a new business, you're not starting from scratch. You've got a whole load of wonderful people, challenges on sort of personnel side, challenges on finance side, legal side, etc., that you need to sort of sort out. immediately in some instances. But you still need to provide a seamless customer service, a seamless customer experience for, you know, over 20 locations around the county, and over 700,000 people visiting, using, experiencing those a year. So so you are literally rebuilding a plane while flying it, and that takes time. And you need to prioritize the things that are most critical, that, you know, you can't fly the plane without, and then you need to not triage, but you need to sort of, you know, work through in a very strategic way what you're going to deliver and how you're going to develop, and what new resources and new skills you need in various parts of the team to help you to do that, over a period of probably, I would say, 2 to 3 years, depending on the complexity of the project.